Welcome back to the Banger Bar for another episode of Overkill Reviews. This week, we're taking on the self-titled album from Doris and Silas, out today on Nuclear Blast Records. They formed in 2002 and released the hugely influential deathcore album 5 years later with The Cleansing. Unfortunately, after 2 more albums with the band, vocalist Mitch Lucker died, so the band brought in Eddie from All Shall Perish to sing. This is their second album with him on vocals, and with the band admitting that it is primarily composed of clean singing, let's see how far Doris and Silas run from their deathcore roots. Sure, I could bring up the first 2 singles the band released from the album, Doris and Silas, but there are already enough reaction videos for those. Besides, you could just look at their like to dislike ratio to see what people are thinking of them. Or I'll just sum up the 2 tracks in a little clip here. Those are 2 of the main points of contention for fans, and rightly so. But let's move on to the rest of the songs. Next up, we have Listen, which has my favorite intro on the entire album. I love that opening riff. It sounds like a groovy nu metal band hired Zakk Wylde to play some squeals for him. Shortly after that, we have a severe case of vocal flailing. I get what they're going for, the Jonathan Davis unhinged madman kind of thing, but it just doesn't sound good. Here's another example. I'm all for contrast in music, but that sounds less like a furious rage and more like a childish temper tantrum. In contrast to that song, here we have Dying in a Red Room, which is one of 2 tracks on the album which you could call a ballad. Honestly, I never thought I would say that about a Doris and Silas song. Look, we know Doris and Silas love the Deftones. They've covered Engine No. 9 before. But just because you can brutalize one of their songs does not mean you can sing like Chino. I'm dying through life. I'm living through death. Those lyrics are oddly reminiscent of some old new. Compare I'm dying through life, I'm living through death, to Korn's Once I Died, Now I'm Alive. These 2 are definitely not the only bands to ever contrast life and death, but when you're being so blatantly obvious about your influence, you should probably be careful to come up with some unique material. The track kind of wades through those 2 main parts, and it just never really goes anywhere. As you heard there, the conclusion doesn't really go anywhere either. It's just aimless noodling over moaning of, I'm dying. I don't want to fill a metal video with talk of ballads, but the other one, which is called Conformity, it starts out as if it's almost a Stone Sour number before some weird vocal stylistic choices just derail the train. The last song that I'm going to talk about, and the last song on the 9-track album, it's called Don't Be Careful, You Might Hurt Yourself. That's the fucking dumbest title I've ever fucking heard, man. What's that even mean? Despite the weird title, this is the most traditionally Doris and Silas track on the album. The good news is, it's definitely heavier than most of the album. The bad news is, poor production really takes the wind out of the sails. I know for a fact that Eddie can growl better considering his work in All Shall Perish. I mean, you can blatantly hear the echo on his voice. It's kind of sad that that's as deep as it goes, considering that could be used as a technique to make him sound more powerful. But for fans of their old stuff, at least it's still heavy, right? Vocally, Eddie's just kind of talking there, but the really weird choice is the production on the guitars, which sound like fucking ray guns. It's an okay riff, but it could be a lot better if it was tuned down or just produced better. With the softer parts, I'm sure the band's going for like a Deftones kind of feel, but instead of being like airy and atmospheric, they just sound thin. I'm sure there are people out there who will say that the band should get points just for experimenting, going outside of their boundaries, but first off, this isn't anything new. Sure, it's new for Suicide Silence, but the blueprint for this was laid like 20 years ago. Besides, getting accolades just for experimenting is kind of like a participation trophy for artists. I mean, I could get up, walk out of here, and release a rap album tomorrow, but I shouldn't get points for it because it'd be fucking terrible. Love deathcore or hate it, when Suicide Silence started, they were kind of spearheading a new movement that brought death metal riffs to a younger demographic. Fortunately, they're not at the head of any movement right now. In recent interviews, vocalist Eddie Hermida has been throwing shade at bands like the Black Dahlia Murder, Cannibal Corpse, and Thy Art Is Murder for sticking to their guns. But it's better to do that than to fall flat on your face. When I first heard the album, it reminded me of that scene in Space Jam where the nerdlucks steal the powers of the basketball players, who are then left stumbling around, unsure what the hell they're doing. In preparing for this review, I got visibly agitated with repeated listens. So while there's the occasional cool part, it's not a rewarding experience. And I'm giving the album 1 out of 5 skulls on Overkill Reviews.